everybody. Sean Gibbons from the Communications Network. Hope you all are doing well on, I think we're officially into spring. Someone might want to check me on that, but I think we're officially, at least where I'm at, right outside of Washington, D.C. The winds have died down. It's a little chilly, but it sure does look like spring. It's awfully nice here, so I hope it is for you. As we get underway, if you've been with us before, this is going to sound awfully familiar. You don't even know what I'm going to say. We're going to do the two-word check-in. What that looks like is you're going to go into the chat, just as I am right now. Find that little word bubble down at the bottom of your screen. Chances are you know that from living the Zoom life. You're going to make sure you're talking to everybody, and you're going to type in your name, in which case I'm going to say my name. It's Sean, outside DC. Feeling happy and curious. So type in your name, where you're coming in from, and then two words, how you doing? There you go, Alejandro. All good. Sierra, Catherine, Kelly, Matthias, Shaylin, Gabriel, Emily, Genevieve, David, Chris, Amy, Laura. Okay, y'all are going too fast. Suffice to say, I think we had almost 700, a little over 700 folks RSVP. A lot of us are in the room. You can always say hello to everybody across the chat. And for those of you who remember, we've made 30 minutes available on the other side of this hour so that you can chat with Alisa if you have specific questions. But we're real excited to have her. Before we go forward, a couple quick things we want to share with you. Mr. Kareem, if you don't mind too terribly, let's show them what we got cooking. First, this. Chances are y'all know this. The network back last January launched Slack to make it available for network members to be in touch, because sometimes you got a problem or a question and you benefit from hearing from your colleagues. And so you can see this all here. This is available, always on, always available wherever you might be in the world. And a tremendous, tremendous help. We've been just astonished by how many folks have been kind enough to hop in and share what they know and ask questions and all the rest of it. So good place for you. If you are interested, we'd welcome you there. Let's go forward if we can. I think we're going to run a couple of videos. You'll listen to me while I'm yakking. This is the Circles program. So if you're into Slack, one of the things we've done to make Slack even more useful to you is we've created these programs. You're seeing it here in the video. These are your network within the network. This is this chance for folks to, as it says right here, ask questions, build your community, share knowledge and resources, and seek support. The way I always think about it is this is your kitchen cabinet inside the network. There's 3,000 of us, so it's a great way to get to know some folks who may be most especially helpful to you. So keep an eye out for that if you're a network member. We just added a colleague, Alisa Tursic, is joining us. She's going to be running Circles for us, and I think she's with us in the room today, so say hello to her if you get the chance. Next one, Kareem, let's show them real quickly. And we're showing these videos because we're real proud of them. You can also find them on comnetwork.org. This is our Locals program, like Circles, but based on geography. So rather than getting to know folks based on maybe the job you do or an issue you work on or an identity, this is all about your neighbors. Who's living, maybe doing that work just a couple of blocks away from you all. And the idea is I think we have 16, 17 of these gathering around the country, and they are just tremendous. We've been really, really grateful. It's also a wonderful opportunity for y'all to take leadership roles because we have network members leading these groups around the country. And as it says, in person and coming soon, they're going to be available on Slack. Here's some of the cities that we're operating in, and they're free and open to all. Unlike that other stuff I talked about, anybody is welcome at your local. So get local if you can, more on the Com Network site. All right, let's move along. We have 3 local groups gathering. Our friends in Seattle, end of this month, just before we hop into April. This is not an April Fool's joke. They're heading to the Gates Discovery Center. Our friends at Gates are so kind. Welcome everybody in. And these fabulous folks, probably familiar to you if you live in the Seattle area, these are our network leaders out there. They will be hosting a fantastic event. All right, let's go forward if we can. Kareem, next one is our friends just down. It's at the 10 or I-5. I can never remember the highway, but the highway that connects Seattle, you can drive down it. You'll get to Portland in a couple hours' time. And on April 17th, won't take you that long to get down there, but if you get there on April 17th, there's a great event, Spring Happy Hour happening, and all these lovely folks will be out and about, happy to welcome you. And then finally, our friends in Washington, D.C., where I'm at, hopefully I'll get a chance to see you also on the 17th. We are going to be gathering together, including our friend Liz. Liz, if you're with us, congratulations. Liz is having a baby before too long, but we're excited to see everybody there. If you're in the DC area or even just in town visiting, come hang out with us. All right, with that, let's move forward. A couple other quick things coming up super duper soon. April 5th, we have a deadline. If you want to send in a proposal you want to present with Kansas City for us at ComNet 24, got to get those in now, gang. We're doing those on a rolling basis. Real excited, grateful to everybody who's already sent theirs in, but time is running short. April 5th is our deadline there. All right, let's move forward. There's a link in the chat should you want to do that. The other thing the deadline is approaching, this is April 20th, is the Jones Award. So Dr. Clarence B. Jones, maybe you saw him at the Super Bowl. Reality is we've had a wonderful award. We've named a number of winners over the last 7, 8 years. And the idea is to lift up organizations who are doing really extraordinary, compelling communications work that's made a difference. It literally has had an impact that we can point to. So we can all learn from it. So if you have an organization that jumps to mind for you, by all means, we want to hear about them. Send in a nomination. That's free and easy to do. Just need to do it by April 20th. All right, let's go forward. The Frank Carell Scholarship. Here's the other thing. This is the last thing with a deadline attached. About a month's time, maybe a little bit more than that to get this in. And the idea here is we want to make sure that we have opportunities for everybody who wants to be with us in Kansas City to do so. And so thanks to our friends at Rockefeller, we're able to offer 25 seats free of charge. They come with the network membership as well, and something we've been really proud to be able to do for a number of years now. So more on the website. You'll see the link there in just a quick second. But please get those in if you want to apply. And then finally, coming up, and that is going to be April 22nd. So again, just about a month's time out. Our friend Todd Rogers, who teaches up at the Kennedy School at Harvard, spends all his time thinking about what do people pay attention to, or more precisely, what do busy people, how can you write for those folks? How can you make sure you're understanding what their needs are? And how do you design your writing and craft your writing in such a way that you'll actually meet their needs and they'll actually engage with you? And so Todd spends a lot of time studying that. He'll be with us April 22nd. So stay tuned for that. And I think we've got the RSVP in the chat. All right. With that, I think I get to say welcome to Alisa. But before I do, you've seen Kenya graciously keeping up with me while I run my yap here. She is offering ASL services. She's pinned up there if you have need. Keep an eye on her. We also have closed captioning, so feel free to avail yourself of that should you have need. With that, it's my honor to get to invite Alisa Miller to join us. She is the board chair of the Lumina Foundation, so she knows the kind of work that we all do. She's familiar with our field. She's also, until fairly recently, was the CEO of PRI, which is Public Radio International. So if you're a fan of Kai Ryssdal and Marketplace, she was his boss, but she quit because of the AI revolution. I'm probably simplifying that story quite a bit. But Alisa, if you don't mind, maybe why don't you go ahead and take it away? And oh, just a quick reminder, because Tristan put this into the chat. At the end of this, we will go into office hours. So we've got 30 minutes for folks to gather and ask Alisa specific questions. Welcome you to do that if you got the time. All right, with that, I'm going to get out of your way. I'll see you all on the other side. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Sean. I'm so excited to be here today to talk to you about AI for Good, a recipe for getting generative AI right. I've been thinking quite a bit about this talk over the last couple of months and how excited I am to talk to purpose-driven leaders and communicators like yourselves, and to bring some knowledge that I can bring to the party in terms of ways to not only think about Gen AI, but how you could think about starting to use it, mitigate the risks from it, and give you some practical tips as well as kind of almost checklists of ways of thinking about how you can move this forward as a part of learning within your organization. So I will do a quick setup, and I'm going to talk about the AI future we seek, obviously as purpose-driven leaders and communicators, some quick facts, and then we're going to go into some of those checklists and very practical pieces about thinking about AI maturity in your organization, and to the extent you are from kind of novice to beyond, how to think about what you could be doing currently at the stage that you are at. Then I'll talk about how, as communications professionals, as leaders, how we think about how we can augment our work with AI, and take you through the communications process. Then I'll do some practical tips on de-risking AI so that you can take advantage of the opportunity, learn, and not bring risks to the fore for you. And then I'm going to end with why I think AI is essential for purpose-based organizations and how important it is for us to get started if we haven't already. So as I think about the future, and I think as we all consider AI, it does offer unprecedented opportunities, and it also reminds us about that it's required for us to balance this progress against the consequences that can come from AI itself. And as a sector and as a society and as a world, I think what we're looking for is how we can create that future where AI empowers humanity and doesn't overshadow it. So I have this in my mind as I'm giving you very practical tips about how we use it. It's ultimately in the service of meeting this goal. So, as Sean said, I bring a history of looking at how technology impacts how we communicate and interact with people. Spent some time as CEO of Public Radio International, and now also a co-founder of this company, Pluralytics, in the space of looking at communications and technology, and as chair of the Lumina Foundation board. I'm also an unlikely AI patent holder, and we can talk more about, frankly, the opportunity that AI provides for more people to be able to say things like that and to be able to be in technology, even if you don't have an engineering background. I think there's a lot of opportunity there. I'm passionate about being responsible in the use of AI. And as a co-founder of Pluralytics, of someone who is using AI to equip organizations with real-time AI-powered intelligence, I can see the power of how it can be used to analyze vast quantities of content, to understand more and to see things that are difficult as humans for us to see alone, right? We don't have thousands of hours to look at everything together and understand how it could all add up into additional insights, but also how we can be even more effective at our work because we have some of those insights. And what does that feedback loop look like along the way? So I'll talk more about that. And I've also had the opportunity most recently to be a part of the AI Global Council, which is really looking at all kinds of aspects of AI adoption across both policy for some who are very involved in that area who are on the council, but also in this sort of practical sense of how to get started and how to think about it and how to mitigate risk and take advantage of opportunity. And so I would encourage you to follow me on LinkedIn. I'm constantly sharing information about this. Pluralytics has interesting things in its feed as well, and certainly the AI Global Council is always publishing content as well. So just to level set here, I thought that some of these statistics would be helpful as we dive in. AI is estimated to drive an estimated 22% net increase on US GDP by 2030. So it just gives you a sense of the immense potential impact of AI on our lives across all sectors and what that could mean for us. We also know when we talk with leaders that they're concerned about this technology dependence, and at the same time, they don't feel they have the skills to take advantage of it. So it's sort of that on the one hand, on the other hand, right? So there is a lot of acknowledgement that this is coming. In fact, it's already here. What do I do about it and how do I manage it? And then I thought that this was an interesting fact. I think we've all heard about, when ChatGPT first launched in November, December of 22, how it had 1 million users within a week. These are some more recent statistics of just ChatGPT alone, but obviously we know there's a lot more players on the field at this point. But 180 million users generating billions of visits and 100 million weekly users. So there's a lot going on in the space, and that's just with ChatGPT alone. I'm not going to do a bunch of definitions, but just as I talk through a couple of things in the presentation, just to say that Gen AI is a type of AI technology that can produce content and analysis from text, imagery, audio, and synthetic data. That large language models are a type of AI, generative AI algorithm that uses deep learning techniques to help understand, summarize, and generate and predict new content from language. So obviously that is something that we're all quite aware of as we look at communications. And then we know that there are many players, but some very large players, right, who are playing at the highest levels of LLMs and what that could mean for the future of communications, but also the future of how organizations themselves operate. So hard to underplay how much is happening, where it's happening. And today we're going to be focused on the Gen AI and LLM pieces. I'm not going to be talking about general AI in terms of machine learning and some of those things. I'm really focusing in on at least what I hear the most from communicators about how do I tackle and use this, and what are some things I should think about. So if you remember only one thing from this talk today, it's this. Just because Gen AI says something, in other words, you've asked it to do something for you in a prompt, right? So that's how it works. You ask it in a prompt and it starts to generate information for you. It doesn't mean that it's right. So you ask it to do something, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's correct, right? This is an important thing to understand, and it's solvable, but it must be understood. So we don't necessarily or would want to trust exactly what Gen AI is giving me, but it can help you do certain types of tasks and certain kinds of things faster and with more depth. But you need to have some of those guardrails and systems in place to know and or to identify when it's right and when it's wrong. Okay, so we'll talk more about that. But let's level set. Where are we without AI? Where are we without AI as we think about communications, marketing, and connecting with people on important topics in terms of meeting our mission? When you talk to marketers and communicators, these are some of the challenges that they say that they have, right? They face creative and strategy and challenges in emphasis on KPIs, which inhibits a focus on creativity. Too much time spent on business as usual execution or repetitive tasks. Lack of technology to execute on those creative ideas. And it's hard to demonstrate the ROI impact of creativity. So 98% of communicators say they have these problems and they wish they could solve some of them, right? And 79% are confident that AI can automate routine tasks and free up time for creative thinking. And these are examples of where they hope or could see perhaps that AI could be helpful in solving some of those problems. Generating creative ideas, automating repetitive tasks, optimizing strategies in real time. So how can I adjust so I can make what I'm actually doing right now out there in the world communicating better? Enhance the analysis so I know and can understand why things are happening. Give me those insights. And predictive analytics. So how can I know in advance so I can do better before I even put this potential piece of content out there? And finally, personalization. Could this allow me to scale things in ways around personalization that are really hard given my current capacity? But I know I could be more effective if I could be more effective at personalizing. The other thing to note is that according to this really interesting AI trends study from WordPress, nearly half of our sector recently surveyed, right? Not half of our sector, but nearly half of those surveyed, I should say, already use AI a few times a week. So it's already happening. You can see the daily number a few times a week and a few times per month. So that's already happening. And if you survey specifically people who are in media research and brand types of professions, over 70% are using it daily, right? So you can kind of see the Venn diagram between our sector, right? And then people who are in the communications arena, how many people or what percentage of people are already using this on a daily basis. So it's here, it's already here, it's already being used, it's already being used in the public / purpose-driven sector, and it's also being used daily by communicators in the communications sector. And what are they using it for? They're using it to design, to illustrate, lots of social media content creation, writing copy, content creation, and then you see from there, you see personalization, content classification, and down the list, right? Already there, already being used, and here's how it's currently being used. So there's challenges. So even as organizations are using or considering using, these are some of the concerns that they talk about. They talk about the training. making sure people are using it well, right? Getting the best output from their Gen AI experiences. The cost, right? Wanting to manage the costs. How do I think about that? What are ways to bound that so it doesn't get out of control, but yet I'm able to take advantage of learning and being able to take advantage of the benefits that this could provide me. The privacy and security concerns, obviously very important. We'll talk more about that. Data scarcity. So to what extent it's as smart as the data that I give it, or what data was it created on, right? So thinking about data issues. The poor quality of content. So I'm asking it to do things, but I'm not thrilled with the responses I'm getting. What do I do about that? And then obviously the generative AI biases themselves, right? There are biases that live in technology, as we all know, and how do I account for them, understand them, and what can I do to help mitigate them? Because I don't have control over how an LLM has been created. And so what do I do about that? How do we do it responsibly? I think the primary question, if we're thinking about this from an organizational perspective, how to get started and or how to be kind of smart about how we continue to learn, is to ask the question, what problem am I trying to solve with AI? Not all the things can AI do for me, but what problems can I solve that I have today that I would like to use AI to help me solve? And it could be that it's around automation or analyzing data or enhancing donor who have to fundraise, right? That personalization. So am I trying to leverage it to develop new capabilities, to enhance current capabilities, or eliminating repetitive tasks? And remember, here's that list presented slightly differently of what were the hopes for the use of AI. When we survey communicators, what do they hope problems that it could solve, right? Creative ideas help me with that, help me with those repetitive tasks, optimize strategies in real time, enhance data analysis, power of predictive analytics, and to personalize campaigns. These are perfect examples of where to start. You may have your own list, right, inside your organization. These are lists that come from other communicators and what they're grappling with within their organizations. So what question or what problem am I trying to solve? And then understand where you are in terms of maturity. So what I'm going to do is walk through this simple model that I think can help with some key questions to ask yourself and some key actions that you can take depending on where you fall in this spectrum. I'm going to focus on the box here and not talk a lot about advanced or expert, because advanced and expert are probably and most likely technologies and companies themselves at this stage, although not exclusively. But I have a sneaking suspicion that as a sector, we are probably somewhere between covert and growing. And so I'm going to focus my comments here, although when you'll have the presentation for later, you'll see the check boxes for advanced and expert as well. So my recommendation overall is to get to growing in the next 12 months as an organization. And I'll go into numerous reasons why, but number one is in order to understand and to learn, experiential learning is really important if we're going to engage with and leverage AI for our missions. And the sooner you get started, the better you are going to be in a position to understand its strengths, understand its weaknesses, and be creative about how you can use it to forward your mission. So learning by doing, but there's different ways to do that to mitigate risk and take advantage of that opportunity. So we'll talk about that. So let's talk about stages. I love the covert stage in part because it is a acknowledgement that this is probably already happening. It's probably already happening in your organization, maybe unofficially, or by people who work in your organization who are doing this in their personal time, right? They're playing with this technology in their personal time. And so there is opportunity to learn from this to also think about what problems we can solve, because people who work on your teams or work in your organization may have incredible suggestions for you of where to start because they're already playing. So we'll talk more about a checklist around covert in just a second. The next level is novice. This is where you've done some testing within guardrails, right? Within pilots, within small teams who are doing interesting things and bringing back information about what they're learning within constrained and smart sort of uses. So, for example, and we'll get to this a little bit later, you know, just as you wouldn't share confidential information across the organization with reply all, right? You would not be putting confidential information into Gen AI, right? So there are aspects of kind of guardrails that you can put around pilots. Some are obvious, but still need to be stated, and different ways to manage risks so that you can learn. And we'll talk more about that. So some testing is taking place. Results begin to foster learning. And we're beginning to understand not only the quality of data that the Gen AI gives me, but also the quality of data that's unique to our organization that we might be able to leverage to help the Gen AI be smarter for us. The growing stage means you've piloted and you've selected some tools and you're using some tools. You notice I say some tools and not one tool. The environment is moving quick enough that it's important to continue to test and look and take advantage of multiple tools, not because you're going to have 10 of them, but think about a small handful that's a part of this growing and learning process. You're also tracking what's happening and you're having that conversation. I cannot state it enough. It's not just about experimentation, it's about tracking results and understanding and analyzing what's happening. You also have a sense of your data quality, both that's coming from these systems for you, but also what is data quality, what is the state of your own data inside your organization, right? How is it organized? Are we able to use it to feed the Gen AI so we can learn from it, right? So all of that kind of gets you to that growing stage. And I think you could stay in growing stage for some time, right? Because we're all going to continue to learn as new capabilities come forward with AI, but it gives you a basis to continue to learn from. So covert, acknowledge unofficial use, conduct an inventory, talk to people about it, start discussions about the benefits and potential risks, right? Novice level, engage in multiple pilot projects. Again, it's not about everybody starts using X, it's about groups of people using it. Build on testing and rule setting. Establish clear and initial guidelines for Gen AI usage. And I'm going to give you some resources later in this presentation of places to look for that. Prioritize specific use cases where you can get immediate value. Where can you get immediate value, either in efficiency or enhancing or giving you a capability you didn't have before? And invest in basic training programs to upskill staff, depending on and or what tools you're using or what use cases there are. And then ultimately, I think I have, yeah. For growing, develop tracking mechanisms to monitor the impact and performance. So this is really important that we start collecting the information about how it's working. And there are various tools already available that can help you do this, right? Refine and select additional and or hone in on specific AI tools that are working well for you. But again, it doesn't mean that you're just selecting one, right? And establish dedicated teams or centers of excellence. Okay. And as I said, there is an advanced slide and there is an expert slide, but we're not going to be diving deep in that today. Okay. Been talking a lot about the robots, a lot about the AI. But let's remember and let's say that humans are very important. And humans are very important so that the AI works effectively. So I'm a big believer in that the AI cannot get there on its own. We still need people. Yay. In order to do great work, do our jobs, have context, and be able to make decisions about where we want to move next and take in information so that we can be more and more effective. And this is an example of a way of looking at that when we look at the communications process itself. Okay. You'll see at the top, I have stages: ideation, research, drafting, aligning, understanding. And then it goes around and around again. So this can be like a circle. I have AI powered components, conceivably, that can contribute to that stage. And then we have the most important, which is the human led at the bottom. And this is sort of in service of solving and getting at some of those challenges that we've already talked about that we're having as communicators. And how can AI help? And how can AI add a step that I didn't even know was possible so that I can be more effective, right? So we have the ideation phase where the AI powered components might be giving me ideas, giving me initial sort of versions or thoughts, right? And then what I'm doing as a human is I'm assessing the strategic fit of those. I'm developing them. I am writing on top of them. I am honing them based upon strategies and perspectives I have. Research stage. It's that collection of supporting data that helps me know that I have the information that I need to convey what it is that I want to convey about the particular topic. So being able to extract points from key web research by leveraging AI, and then as a human, understanding the context, evaluating that credibility, right? Doesn't stop us from fact checking, right? So all the things that we would normally do, we would still do that as a part of this process. And I am a synthesizer. I'm helping to frame it in a way that I know is so important for what I'm trying to accomplish and who I'm talking to. Drafting, right? So research to drafting. Now I have the facts. I have some ideas. I have some context. I can use the vetted information to help me draft. The AI can help me draft based on some of that vetted information. Then I can further write, edit, refine that content for style and facts and additional factors based on strategic fit that the AI isn't going to know. Okay. Then I have this aligning phase. And in a sense, aligning, it's something we already do, but it becomes even more powerful when you have the capacity that AI can provide you. This allows you to have additional considerations and versions around not only your audiences of who it is that you're trying to connect to, and am I saying it in a way that they are going to respond to, and having information in advance on that, but also providing multiple formats so that it's not only just the email, but it's the web page or the landing page or the blog post, all of the things that can support a particular strategy that I have. And using the AI to evaluate and help me vet from versions or particular ideas that I'm considering, how to hone in, where to hone in, and move myself to my final versions, which again is the human decision, right? So understanding that context, making those final audience selection decisions, final editing, and other considerations. And then after publishing, right, or after putting that out there, I can use AI to evaluate how it did, understand trends, understand what ways a particular language seemed to resonate, and not being like, wow, that was surprising. I wonder why. Having more information about the why. So AI can help you uncover patterns that it's very difficult for you to see on your own as a communicator. It doesn't mean that it's always right in everything it sees, right? We are still people who have to take that into account, but often it can deliver an insight or confirm something that you thought was going on. And now you have an analytical underpinning to a gut instinct that you had before, right? Which makes it easier for you to demonstrate both KPIs as well as effectiveness when we talk about communications. Here's some examples of de-risking strategies. On security, only use platforms that have APIs that are not feeding the core LLM models. make sure that that your data is not being used to train the core LLMs, unless, of course, you want it to, right? How is the opting in and opting out occurring, and where is that occurring, and making sure you have the answer to that question. When we talk about quality and efficacy, I'm a proponent for using platforms that include custom models that help you to avoid sort of the randomness that can come from general prompting, right? That hasn't been tested thousands and thousands of times of what kind of output you're going to get from that, right? Let systems who have done that already help you with that part of the process so that you can do that higher order work. Training time and costs. Again, use platforms that either eliminate or reduce prompts and or have kind of learning and or ability to kind of get to insights faster to the extent that you're looking to pilot and making selections. Plagiarism, right? Use platforms that have either incorporated functionality to at least help you identify the risk of plagiarism. The systems aren't perfect, right? But they can help you identify whether there's a possibility that this is plagiarized. By the way, sometimes it could say it's plagiarized and it's not, but at least, again, it's telling you this is something to review, right? And or it could be a system in and of itself in the way that it works. It reduces plagiarism or reduces plagiarism risk because it's already making word and different selections that aren't going to be taking things whole cloth from somewhere else. And then finally, the accuracy and quality. Again, you saw it as a part of human led. You saw it along all the way. You can use AI to help you measure how AI is doing. And you are a human. And human leaders and human leaders in communications, we know what we're doing. We're good at what we do. How can you leverage this technology to help you, but you are at the center of the decision making and the use of that technology, right? And where have you incorporated human in the loop all throughout that process along the way to take advantage of the opportunity and mitigate the risks? Okay, I mentioned about examples of Gen AI usage policies. Here are some examples, and I know we'll have this in the chat and elsewhere from the AP, from the Brookings Institution, and from the BBC that I think are solid. What these policies often say are things like, when we use Gen AI, we will comply with our other standing policies, right? A la my confidential information example earlier. It will talk about when it can be used or not used, right? It will talk about potentially how you look at reviewing or validating the output. Like, what is that? How do we think about that? In other words, nothing is published without a human looking at it, right? For example. What platforms we've chosen to use or not using, or here's where we're piloting, or here's where we're not piloting, like being clear about where you are and what you're using. What data can and cannot be entered into the LLMs generally or into software generally, like what rules are we using along that? So for example, no personally identifiable information, things like that. And policies about disclosure when and if Gen AI was used, right? And that's a very interesting area that is evolving as we speak. Like, I think about this isn't a perfect analogy, but think about how we all use spell check today, right? We use spell check and perhaps Grammarly, right, in our writing, or at least get those suggestions. It's not as if we say at the end of the day, I use spell check or Grammarly on this piece of content. It'll be very interesting to see where that line becomes when we talk about Gen AI in the future. I suspect that there'll be certain things that either people will assume that Gen AI has been used in some way. The question is whether you're attributing it to a person, etc. Like, where is that line of when I've used it and when I haven't? And I think that will be an evolving story as we all dive more and more into Gen AI. Where is Gen AI implementation going? I think the ideation and drafting stages are kind of table stakes right now. That is deepest use. It's happening a lot. And it's also the place where, as you can see, it's at the beginning of the process. So the vetting and all of that occurs throughout the process from that point. So I think this is one of the reasons also why it's so powerfully used in this area already. What's not easy is necessarily per my thing. If there's only one thing you remember from this presentation, that what Gen AI gives you when you ask it may or may not be right. Knowing whether it's the right thing and how do you know? So measuring over time, and that's why I'm like, get to that growing stage as quickly as possible. Measuring is as important as doing. It's important as generating and thinking about content and using those tools and measuring how it's impacting your work, how it's impacting your accuracy, how it's making you more productive. Measuring is as important as doing as we learn about these technologies together and their potential impacts. And then that analytical phase, which leads nicely into that, where it's like, okay, now that I use this, what impact does it have? And how do I help measure that it's making me better, right? How does it help me see things that are nearly impossible without it, those patterns? In the future, I think what we'll see is AI talking to AI, doing more steps, which then will continue to ask for the human, where am I taking part in that system, right? To make it more and more effective. So multimodal across video, audio, et cetera, all those pieces coming together, happening right now, right? When we talk about that ideation stage, but also multi-step tasks, which we can talk more about. But, today, thinking about where we start, right? And how we take advantage of this in terms of what problems can I solve today and leverage this technology to make me more effective. So why I think it's so essential for our sector that we participate now. If we are not using this and learning about it experientially, I think it makes our critiques and advocacy about AI and the future of AI and the future of Gen AI less effective because we don't have that context. So I think just from a stakeholder, we have an important voice in this conversation. The best way is to be an informed voice and a voice that's learning as a part of it. So we have that higher conceptual level of concerns around privacy, efficacy, et cetera, right? Who gets access and who doesn't, right? All really important questions. And our ability to have even more informed perspectives on that is because we've used it and we see from our own experience what its strengths and weaknesses are. Frankly, one of the things that's amazing about Gen AI is that you can solve problems or gain some of those efficiencies. Who better to think about purpose-driven results and purpose-driven opportunities to use the technology than purpose-driven sector and purpose-driven organizations, right? What can we invent to leverage this technology to move our missions forward? We are more likely to be the ones that invent those perspectives and where that can happen, not elsewhere. So how can we do that? And finally, how can we, if what we're talking about is being involved in the sector and ultimately being able to take advantage of the opportunities, there is true opportunity with AI. It doesn't have to be a closed door or a barrier. It can be an open door. It can be a way to help equalize across barriers that have existed when we talk about who's playing in technology, for example. The lack of diversity in the technology sector has been talked about. People have tried to take actions to solve it, and they haven't been highly successful, right? So what's amazing about Gen AI is it allows people to create and be a part of creating applications, and they don't have to have some of the same training, for example, understanding exactly how to, develop Python, for example. you don't have to do that and be in a position that you can develop your own website and or application to try to solve interesting problems. So there is a potential to democratize, right? There is a potential to open more doors in ways that are incredibly powerful. And so as a sector, how can we not only advocate and make sure that happens, but also recognize that's part of the opportunity as well. This is not to say that I am a utopian about technology, and I'm not concerned about many of the things we see right in the news and beyond about the impact on jobs and how we look at this evolution of this technology and how it gets incorporated in our lives. We need to make sure that we don't leave people behind. And what are the policy and other solutions to help make that happen? And at the same time, this can be democratizing in a way that I think can be powerful. And so, how do we support and augment those sorts of evolutions when it comes to Gen AI? So, I will leave it there in relationship to kind of talking about a roadmap. Sean asked me to do a little bit about what does that sort of analyze loop look like when we talk about Gen AI. And so I'm going to use a very quick pluralytics example, just so that you can get a sense of something very tactical vis-a-vis kind of strategic or conceptual in the way that we've been talking about things today. So as I mentioned, what we do is we use our platform, our customers, our clients use our platform to understand whether their language is going to align with key goals and leveraging that language intelligence to help them be more effective. So whether you're trying to align with a brand, trying to align to an audience or audiences, so something we've been working on that's been particularly interesting in the sector is being bridgy, right? How can I express this idea and not, lose them at hello, right? Because I'm saying something in a way that I don't even understand is going to send a bunch of people to the door before I can even start the conversation. And then being able to benchmark and or figure out what those special ingredients are so that you can replicate that success and refine to target. So I'll use a very quick example on this. This is an example of some climate change content. And the way to think about it is these green boxes. In this case, this is more done from a small p political standpoint of conservatives versus independents. But you could think of this as my ideal brand voice. You could think of this as I'm trying to reach Midwestern rural women, like, in terms of what is my target or my goal from a language standpoint. Then what you see over here in the control is what the original piece of content was, right? So I score the original piece of content to see what level of alignment. In this case, my goal is I either want to talk to conservatives or I want to talk to independents as it relates to this content. And you can see the original, right? And then you can see how it changes, but you maintain the meaning. So this is part of what Pluralytics AI does, is that we help you figure out how to say what you want to say to have more likelihood that you're going to connect with those audiences. And so this is part of that pre-testing process. As you can imagine, we can, in essence, look at thousands of pieces of content, and or you can, after the fact, and say, let's look at the patterns of who you were speaking to and why this did or did not work, or how you could level it up to work better, or be in alignment with the voice you were speaking around brand. Or in this case, I can pre-test it while I'm creating it so that I have versions that relate to different audiences. And that's what these two examples express. Then below the blue line is additional work we can do and do on our own in relationship to our model. This is where we've actually paneled conservatives and independents. We did a statistical panel where we looked at responses and we showed them the control, right, versus the version that was created for them. So think kind of a taste test, Coke versus Pepsi, right? And in this case, the optimized versions that were created basically for that constituency performed better on a scale of, approximately 2 to 1. right? So this is an example of being able to leverage AI on a piece of content. But this could be a web page, a memo, a social post, etc. But message and then my audience, right? Am I aligned? How could I think about it? What are some interesting word choice ideas? And how could I think about that in relationship to being more effective? So I'll just end on happy to obviously talk more about all of this readiness, how to think about AI. Also happy to offer that we're happy to do a proof of concept with communications network members around taking a look at your content and helping you see some of these insights as you begin to think about and wonder, how can I be more effective in the use of AI? We're happy to be a partner to help you with that through a process such as this, whether it's bridginess, key demos, etc., and analyze content and help you be more effective and see the power of AI. And that's it. So happy to answer questions and excited to hear your thoughts and comments.
Thank you, Alisa. We have a couple of questions here in the Q&A box, gang. That's where I'm looking. If you want to see the questions, you're welcome to go in there. You can vote for them, or you can add your own. We have a limited amount of time, so we're probably going to have to spend most of these questions in office hours. But let's start up at the top. Leanne asks, what are some of the platforms that you would recommend for de-risking? You'd mentioned there were some places to go to think about de-risking. This was earlier on in the presentation, Alisa.
That's a great question. I think uh, it really depends upon what it is that you're trying to do. Because, in terms of measurement, I can talk about some particular qualities of platforms. So I think platforms that allow for or require less on prompting will tend to have less risk associated with them because they have already figured out the prompting behind the scenes, right? In other words, they have tested over and over and over again if they're interacting with Gen AI about, kind of pushing out like the hallucination problem, right? One of the things that people say is it starts doing things, or it starts repeating itself, or it starts throwing in facts that I didn't want, things like that. Platforms that are interacting with Gen AI, interacting with the LLMs, have helped test what some of those problems are, and then they have helped to refine the system to not be kind of as subject to prompting, what's called prompting risk, right? So less prompting and more use of platforms can be certainly as a quality to sort of help you mitigate those risks. The other thing is I would encourage to look for platforms that not only have figured out how to decrease prompting risk, but they have their own data or own systems that they have developed that are independent of the LLM. So the way that we talk about this sort of in the startup worlds, it's not just a skin on top of an LLM, right? It is actually independent or has independent data or information that helps it be more effective in what it does. Yes, that's part of what Pluralytics has, right? We have independent data using behavioral science, understanding people, what language is most likely to relate to people, and then we can leverage Gen AI to help with that process, but we are not dependent, right, on it, Gen AI to have that information. We have that information ourselves, right? So I would look for systems that have sort of smarts that are separate from the Gen AI or the LLM itself. So those are two qualities that I would say. Otherwise, and I'm happy to talk about it more offline. I think it kind of depends on the problem that you're solving.
Makes sense. Our friend Susan asks, she says, I struggle with the idea that Gen AI often gives incorrect information. How do we actually save time if we have to check everything? Do we expect that to improve?
That's a great question. So I think what Gen AI can help you save time with is at the ideation phase, right? And sometimes that when we talk about communications, that's because it doesn't even include fact X, right? We're just trying to kind of generate different ways of saying something, or asking it to help us think about something that is not necessarily factually based, right? So there's that. Secondly, if we have our own facts that we do know to be correct, you can leverage or use Gen AI or other systems, right, to rewrite, but that it maintains, right, the facts that you know to be true in that writing, right? So one of the things, in Pluralytics, we have a rewrite function that basically takes from the original, but just rewrites it based upon the model that you're going for, but it's not changing facts, right? The facts remain the facts, right? And or if you are doing pure right from scratch things, put the facts in that you know are the facts that you want it to include, and then it will include those facts, right? So it's not about, I would not use Gen AI just to say, hey, give me the facts about X, right? I'd use Gen AI to think about pros or analyzing information for which you have the information that you're asking it to give you insights on. I would be less interested in, unless there is literally a response. Like, I have used ChatGPT helping me figure out a formula for Excel that I cannot figure out, and I keep getting the error, right? And how did I used to have to solve it? I'd have to go to search. I'd have to search for it, hope it came up in writing. It probably didn't. So then I'd have to go find a video of a person who sort of had that same problem, scroll through it, try to find the spot, and maybe it would be applicable to me, right? Now what I do is I plop it into Chat GPT and I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. It gives me 3 different versions of how I could fix it. I put it in and I've solved it in 60 seconds. Like
That's awesome.
but, right. And that's just an example of, like, there was an answer. Like, there
Right.
is an answer how to solve that, right? So again, that's a great example of knowing, at least at this stage, and that in that generic LLM environment, what worked and what didn't. But that saved me hours. That saved me hours so I could do the higher order thinking, because I'm not great at the array of blah, 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 right? Inside of Excel, right? So those are the kinds of things that, when we talk about solving problems, it's like looking at what problem am I solving and how can this help me solve that problem? And I've sort of accepted I used to have to go look for hours on YouTube to solve my Excel problem, and now I don't.
Sort of reminds me, when you talk about facts, it makes me think of like Wikipedia. I worked as a journalist for many, many years earlier in my career, and we had an edict every place I worked, which was Wikipedia is not where you go to get facts. It is not a credible source. My guess is that might have been true for you at PRI as well.
Absolutely. And you see this, and then one of the reasons I included the policies from the AFP and the BBC, do you think they are using it to find facts? No, right? What we have in our sector, we have facts, right? That's part of our currency is facts, like, because we did the original research to find them, or we help to elevate great factual information as a part of doing our mission. So this is not asking Gen AI to take the place of that, right? It's looking at throughout the process, what are some of the things of those challenges I'm facing as a communicator, and how could it maybe help me solve that problem?